I tell you what I think. I think it is about quality of experience and perceived value. And as long as audiences believe that they're still getting value for money and service, they'll continue to pay.
Welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I'm your host, Vianca Mayer, and today we have a very special guest with us, Warren Daniels, the Chief Marketing Officer at Bynder. In our conversation with Warren, we'll delve into his early life, career, and the evolution of marketing in today's digital landscape. We'll also explore his insights into the ongoing financial crisis, the role of AI and automation in marketing, and much more. So, without further ado, let's get started. Alrighty, so Warren, thank you so much again for joining us today and welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I'd like to kick off our episode today and learn a little bit more about you. So can you briefly introduce yourself to the audience and tell us more about you and your backstory?
Sure, and thanks so much for having me. Delighted to be here, Vianca. Hopefully we'll have a good discussion over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour. Absolutely. So, my name's Warren Daniels, of course. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Bynder. We're a leading digital asset management vendor. About 25 years experience in B2B tech marketing. And, I think it's a pretty interesting journey, actually, because I remember kind of bouncing out of university with my degree. I thought about a career in FMCG or brand marketing. I always knew I wanted to do marketing, of course, but I found out pretty quickly that without experience, it was pretty difficult to get a role in brand marketing for an FMCG. And at that time, there was this technical revolution happening. So, it was the height of the .com era, lots of software startups around. And so I ended up landed at a small British startup vendor, more than anything because I was fascinated by the technology. So it was electronic virtual assistants and, what was very early on natural language processing that morphed into kind of the customer service and chatbots that you see online. And, from that point forward, I was hooked by B2B and by tech marketing. Very fortunate to have worked with just two incredibly experienced marketeers that gave me exposure to all types of marketing, from PR to brand to product marketing very, very early on in my career. And so, that's how I landed in B2B. And, I've had the honor and privilege of working in organizations of all shapes and sizes, from startup to scale up, to, of course, corporates and big global brands like IBM and SAP over the course of the last 25 years.
Wow. Yeah, you have had, I looked at your history as well. You've had an extensive career so far, and really impressive as well. One thing I did want to ask you, though, because you did bring that up, you've been working in marketing since the 90s, right? The evolution of marketing that you must have seen from then to now must just be crazy. Is there something that stood out to you the most, from how different it is now to how it was back then?
Yeah, I don't know that I can pinpoint one thing, because there's been such significant change in I always felt throughout my career, every 5 years, I say things like, hey, I've not seen so much change in marketing as I have done in the last 5 years or so. But perhaps I'll call out a few, Vianca. I think, first of all, I think the science of marketing and the fact that it has become significantly more measurement and metrics driven. I remember those early days at Stratum Soft, my first job. We kind of measured raw leads and some other brand awareness metrics at a high level, and that was pretty much it. So I think the level of sophistication around measurement and metrics is so much greater today than it ever has been before. I think automation is the other thing, that prevalence of MarTech across all aspects of marketing now. I always fascinated looking at, I'll name drop Scott Brinker here. He does his MarTech ecosystem diagrams, 9, 10, 11, 12,000 different MarTech tools available in the market today. So, I think automation is automation technology is certainly another part of that. Collaboration is something else that I can't ignore. I kind of remember early in my career, marketing generated leads, sales went off and closed them. Once the leads had been thrown across the wall, it was your job to go and do what you need to do in order to bring the business in. I think just that relationship between BDRs, AEs or sales and customer success teams is so much tighter than it ever was before. And the interlock with product, I think, as well has changed significantly. I know, Vianca, you asked for one thing, but I need to do a few here because I think the answer would be incomplete without these things. And then I think just the approach to funnel management has changed dramatically as well. And the rigor around not just volume, but the right type of leads and opportunities. You have ICP, size, persona, seniority, previous engagement. All of these things are things that we now look at to give us an indicator of ROI on marketing and overall revenue or ARR for your business. So for me, it's now much more about impact on revenue than it is around top of funnel lead generation, although unquestionably there is a link between those things. Mm-hmm. And then perhaps just finally, and probably most importantly, the shift in buyer behavior. When I started out in B2B marketing, the sales organization and the vendor held a lot of power because they held a lot of the information and education that buyers needed to access. And now there is a plethora of information available through multiple channels and sources. When I started, it was the beginning of the internet, but now you've got social media channels and influencers and the like. And so, that shift in buyer behavior to self-education, inbound demand versus outbound demand, I think is critically important. I think it changes the game in terms of how organizations have to operate in order to drive cut through and differentiation. But the fundamentals of marketing haven't changed, Vianca, by the way. It's still about building brand awareness and then creating demand that converts to revenue. And that hasn't changed. They're still the core values of marketing, in my opinion.
100%. Yeah, I mean, look, we have gone through a lot, I think, in most industries as well. And I mean, looking back, I was born in the 90s, but I do still remember what ads and everything looked like back then. It's completely different now. But yeah, I like what you said, that marketing hasn't really changed. There's still the fundamentals there that you need to really keep an eye on. But yeah, thank you for that. So growing up around London and Kingston University, you must have become so accustomed to the city's melting pots of cultures and ideas. How do you think these experiences molded you into the person you are today?
It's a really, really good question. And so, I don't know about kind of how it's molded me as a professional and a person, so to say. But I think that London is such a culturally diverse and rich city. You've seen changes in working patterns and behaviors that have been driven off the back of the pandemic, for example, that I think have been game changers. Yeah, I'd say diversity probably has had an impact on my development as a marketing leader, because I think it's supported the development of my emotional intelligence and cultural awareness. And I think that actually, more than anything else, has enabled me to be a UK based marketing leader in a number of organizations where I've had responsibility, you know, for EMEA, Middle East, Africa, APAC, the US. So I guess I would say that London and the diversity of London helped me to learn how to be a global leader.
Exactly. You know, I really like that you mentioned emotional intelligence, how it helped you develop your emotional intelligence, because I think as someone that's in marketing or any sort of branding or anything like that, I think it's so important to be able to relate to a whole wide audience of people, right? Um, and I think that's actually something that I haven't heard anybody bring up yet about, being emotionally intelligent enough to be able to do marketing. And that's a really, really good point, actually.
I think that empathy with
Mm,
people is always a good thing, because I think it gives you a level of understanding. But I also think it also helps with understanding your audiences. And we as marketeers, I think, have always got sucked into behaviors sometimes where you're operating in the four walls of your organization, the language, the norms, the values, the behaviors of that organization. And you don't stop to look 5 inches in front of your face to look at actually what's right for the customer, the buyer here, rather than the things that we want to do or get done, or the things that we think are going to move the needle. So I think the empathy certainly helps with, I think, orienting around the customer and the buyer. Critically important, because they have so much more choice today than they've ever had before.
yeah, 100%. That makes so much sense. Okay, but also during your career path, you worked with the global tech giants, as you mentioned before, like IBM and SAP. What lessons did you learn during your time at these renowned companies?
Yeah, gosh. So actually, I ended up in corporate, as I call it, IBM and SAP. I ended up in IBM through an acquisition. I was at a company called Princeton Softtech. It was fast growing. It was on-premise software at the time, and I landed in IBM post acquisition. And yeah, I got to be honest, I really did not fancy it and didn't think it was for me. Ended up resigning after 8 weeks or so, and then had wonderful conversations with my my CMO from Princeton Softtech and my new manager at IBM, and they convinced me to stick around and give it a go. Hey Warren, I think you'll like it here, and I think we're going to like you as well. I should thank Susan and Andrew, Susan McKenna and Andrew Barraclough, by the way, for talking me down off the ledge, because I learn about, well, first of all, you get access to resources and people and experience and knowledge in those organizations that you just don't get access to elsewhere very often. And then for me, as it was still fairly early in my career, I got access to training and development, especially around people management. So I ended up being promoted to lead the information management division. It's part of software group at IBM at the time. That was my first proper management role. I got all the help and support in order to develop my management philosophy around that, which then enabled me to go on to SAP. Again, different environment culturally. IBM, a US firm, versus SAP, a German firm. But that experience during that 8-9 years, I think, tooled me for almost anything that I've done since, and I think anything that I've done in my career. So I'm super grateful for what that gave me, not in terms of marketing skills, although I got a lot of value and benefit from working in those organizations, but actually as a marketing leader. Those two organizations set me on my path, that's for sure.
Wonderful. And something that really stood out to me that you just said was, you had two people that obviously really believed in you and encouraged you to keep going. I mean, was there anything that they said that really convinced you, okay, fine, I'll give it another shot?
Well, I think first of all, I already had massive respect for the CMO at Princeton Softtech. I think we had a very similar philosophy on B2B marketing and growing revenue through marketing. So there was already a meeting of minds there. And then I just, when I came to speak to my new manager at IBM, he presented all of the opportunities that working for an organization like IBM represents. And it was the things that I just called out there. No promises around career progression, no promises around what the future holds, but I think just a very honest and transparent view on what IBM might have to offer that perhaps, Warren, you've overlooked. And it came to pass. I think I'm really grateful for the two of them for taking the time to have the conversation. It proved to be probably one of the best decisions in my career.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear, honestly. It just shows how important it is to have people around you, especially in your career and the moves that you make, that really encourage you to, or at least navigate you back onto the right path, at least,
Yeah, so for any up and coming marketeers that are at the start of their career, I would say equally important to the brand that you are considering joining, moving to, if not more important, are the people that you're going to work with and you're going to work for. Again, my job at Stratum Soft, I was in a small team of 3, working with 2 experienced marketeers taught me so much more than I would have got if I'd gone into a larger organization at that point in time. So think about the choices you make in terms of what you do with your career at what stage, because those priorities will change.
100%, exactly. So, again, Warren, given your extensive background and experience, I just wanted to have a discussion with you about something that's happening, in the world right now, and that I think you might have some really good insights to. Especially because I'm sure you've gone through really tough financial waters in the past, and you must have been able to navigate that quite well, or learned a lot from it at least. So, I want to talk to you about the current financial crisis that we're all grappling with at the moment. So, we know that 2023 has had its share of significant layoffs, and sadly, it seems that this trend isn't slowing down anytime soon. Just recently, I know that Google and LinkedIn faced another wave of workforce reductions. So, as an experienced CMO, do you believe that there were or are measures that might have lessened the impact of these cutbacks over the last, say, year that we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, look, no question, macroeconomic and the geopolitical environment is affecting buyer behaviors, both consumer and tech purchasing. I absolutely think that's likely now to be something that we have to deal with in 2024. And I think many marketing teams have and will continue to be affected by resource constraints, and that could be budget cuts, headcount freezes, or sadly, as you've just described, Vianca, layoffs. So, I think first of all, I think I would say that, lessening the impact of the cutbacks, I think during and post pandemic, I think a lot of organizations overhired against demand that they thought would come as a result of a bounce back that never materialized. And actually, I mean, we saw it through the pandemic here at Bynder. Very, very successful period of time in terms of growth for us as an organization. We're one of the fortunate ones. We've managed to continue to grow as more business and commerce has been transacted online digitally, and content has become that much more critical. Here's the things that I call out as fundamental things I think marketing leaders should look at in order to be more efficient, refocus priorities, other than not hiring ahead of the curve, of course, and then having to backtrack. So I think first and foremost, you've got to understand what your buyers want and take the time to really get under the covers of how sales cycles are adjusting. Yeah. So you can't do anything without understanding your buyers and the impact of the economic downturn on their thinking and perspective on, in our case, tech investment. If you're a consumer brand, consumer spending. So, one of the first things we did actually as we got into this, economic environment or economic downturn is, we hit up our customers. Yeah. And because we sell to a marketing audience, yeah, often that was just peers in the marketing team's network. Yeah. So you don't have to spend lots of money on consultancies or deep research to do this. The principle, I think, of thin slicing applies here. Go to speak to half a dozen or a dozen customers or people in your target audience and ask the question, how does the current environment change your thinking about stuff? And we got back some super clear and consistent messaging. Yeah. And that messaging was around, how can I gain better efficiencies, reduce unnecessary or ineffective spend, increase speed of execution, gain competitive advantage when wallet share is that much lower. And then the other thing that we heard back from our customers, MarTech and e-commerce investments are now going through additional layers of approval, whereas a marketing stakeholder would have signed off on our projects, finance or a CEO or procurement are much more heavily involved. And so demonstrating value and ROI becomes increasingly critical. So I guess I would say, understand your buyer and transform your messaging so that you can meet the buyer where their minds are right now. Pivot your messaging and your narrative to be centered more on where they are. I think that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing, as organizations are going to be competing more fiercely, I think, for wallet share, we've thought very carefully about how we drive cut through and engagement in a market where I think differentiation is increasingly important, Vianca. And when we thought about what can drive that, we centered on content, right? Because it's content that drives click, it's content that drives engagement, it's content that ultimately drives conversion. It's that captures eyeballs and an action. And so I think to do that effectively, you have to address the challenge of volume, variety, and then the speed at which you can create and develop content and deliver it across omni-channel buyer journeys. Yeah, and we, like many others, having to do more with the same resources. Yeah, and so how do you start to automate and look for efficiencies within your marketing organization so actually you can absorb some of these challenges without having to absorb additional headcount or additional budget alongside it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then I think just one more thing, perhaps, is the other thing that we did is we tried to reduce friction in our buying process. So we've ungated more of our ROI and value based content. We've just reduced barriers to engagement, and instead of the value exchange being the sharing of contact details, actually we've taken the approach that, hey, we want to help marketeers understand where and how they can be more efficient and address some of the challenges of these market headwinds that we're facing.
What I'm hearing a lot of is, to be honest, is just communication. I think that transparency and communication and reaching out and saying, getting to know what it is that you're trying to, do work alongside your clients really to navigate what's going on in the world at the moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's another shift I've seen a lot of my network taking, actually. The shift from new business to customer or loyalty marketing, Vianca. I think there's a truism, isn't there? It's much easier to sell more to an existing customer that has bought into your brand and your proposition than it is to go and sell to a new one. So I think in these times there is certainly a lot of organizations doubling down on customer and loyalty marketing and tapering off on new business.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, look, speaking of that, I do know that, for instance, Costco were pivoting away from traditional marketing, and they were instead doubling down on customer loyalty and brand ambassadors, as you were just mentioning. But, in light of the recent crisis, how sustainable do you think that strategy is for most companies? And, what steps should brands consider if they're looking to shift their focus in this direction?
Yeah. Well, look, I think it depends, first of all, on the size of organization. When you're a Costco with millions of members across the world, increasing wallet share through that existing base is a completely different kettle of fish to if you are a small to medium sized business with 50 customers. Yeah, probably. If you're an SMB, you're still going to have to orient towards more new business than you are customer upsell. But I actually think the principle of what you just described is a really, really smart strategy. And I think I already explained why that is. It should be easier to sell more to existing customers and expand wallet share than it is to go and acquire new customers, and the cost of acquisition is significantly lower as well. So you think about the friction or the challenges on budget and resources. If your cost of acquisition for existing customers is that much smaller than net new business, I think it makes economic sense to be focused on that if there is opportunity there.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a marketing expert, but when you focus on customer loyalty and brand ambassadors and stuff, and this, I don't know how you'll feel about what I say about this, but I have heard, for instance, Kris Jenner talk about, that marketing is free because social media is free. And, it's out there just for people to grab. And it's quite easy to then, just do marketing for yourself if you know what the recipe is to that. Okay, so then let's go on and say, on the other side of the coin, I know that some companies are also raising prices and implementing more restrictions on their services. Like Netflix did recently, with their no password sharing unless you're in the same house together. And they've raised their prices again recently. I don't think it's quite hit where we are now, but I think it has hit the US so far. So how far would you say companies can push before they start to harm customer loyalty in that sense? Because I know a lot of people were up in arms about that with Netflix, for instance.
Well, they
Um,
just, yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
Bianca, you finish.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I think Netflix just announced their latest quarterly subscriber numbers today. I think the analyst had them at 6 million new subscribers. They are at 9 million new subscribers. I think in that report, they also talked about the impact of eliminating the sharing of Netflix accounts. Um, I tell you what I think. I think it is about quality of experience and perceived value. And as long as audiences believe that they're still getting value for money and service, they'll continue to pay. And hey, look, I got kids. I subscribe to Disney Plus. Their terms changed. The price went up recently. I didn't think twice about cancelling as a result of that, because the kids use the service enough that it is of value. I've got Netflix, Prime, gosh knows what else we've got here. I think as long as there's value in the product, then loyalty remains. And I think if the quality of the content, the frequency of the content diminishes, that's where these organizations will start to have issues. Yeah. And so I think there's a content driven narrative behind this. As long as the content remains valuable, I don't think the changes that you described will make any sort of difference, and it certainly doesn't seem like it has made a difference given their incredible numbers. We should congratulate Netflix on their quarterly numbers. Actually, I mean, well outstripped analyst expectations.
100%. I mean, look, everything you just said, when I found out about their prices going up again, I was just like, well, it's on a debit order, so it's happening. It's fine. I'm not going to go and cancel it. And I think, yes, exactly. It's because of the value of their content. And that's a really, really good point. I think as long as you're getting what you need out of the product that you're buying or the service that you're getting, it's value for money at the end of the day, right?
Well, Bianca, never a truer word spoken. I think that applies to every single business category in every single walk of life. And of course, people value things in different ways.
So moving on as well, now looking at Bynder itself, how can proper digital asset management help in times of financial crisis and inflation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, maybe just a super brief introduction to Bynder and digital asset management, for the audience here. Digital asset management's been around for a while in different incarnations, probably more than 20 years. Traditionally, it was used to move around big honking kind of publishing and media files. Around 2010 became mainstream. Bynder, Bynder came to market with a SaaS DAM solution that was applicable to a bunch of use cases and all industries. And adoption has been steadily growing over time. So what digital asset management enables you to do is create, manage, and deliver creative content in support of exceptional content experiences. So we always talk about delivering a product that enables our customers to deliver exceptional content experiences to their customers. So digital asset management, you should think about it as the single source of truth for all your creative content. And it's critical because content is critical. Organizations today are grappling with what we call this kind of content trilemma, this ever increasing demand for content, a growing number of channels. Yeah, you talked about social media earlier. You think about the growing number of social media channels over the last 10 to 15 years that have sprung up, all with their own ad sizes and so on and so forth. And then, this enhanced consumer expectation from a personalization perspective. And maybe just to illustrate the complexity in the delivery of content, actually, if you think about the number of ad formats across different devices, mobile, desktop, for example, because we're good marketeers, we of course like to A/B test stuff as well, and because we like to measure stuff, that gives us an extra data point to measure. The complexity in content operations and more broadly marketing and commerce is that much greater than it ever was before. And because a lot of e-commerce is now data driven and data led, the world in which we used to operate in, and still to an extent operate in today, because I don't think content operations has evolved as fast as other elements of marketing, are that someone has a need for content. That goes into a content operations team. The content operations team are working on many, many things: digital images, video, print media. I could go on and on and on. They say, okay, we can get back to you in 3 weeks with content. 3 weeks. I'm looking to operate on data that is out of date in 3 hours. And if we don't take advantage of the opportunity now, that opportunity is gone. So, the need to create more content, to scale content creation and content operations, to manage and govern it better so that you can access the right content in the right format at the right time for the right audience, and then automate the delivery of that content to all the channels and platforms that it needs to go to create these incredible content experiences for omni-channel buyer journeys, greater relevancy for your customers, has never been greater than it ever has been before. And that's what we enable for our customers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction, actually. So again, though, now that you've kind of laid out all of that, how do you think that digital asset management that Bynder does it play a crucial role, actually, in helping brands navigate financial challenges?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So, let me give you an example. I referred earlier to this research that we did with our peers and our customers. One of the things that we've heard loud and clear is, hey, we've had to cut back on use of external agencies for creative and content. Yeah, unfortunately, some organizations have had to freeze hires or reduce creative and content teams internally. There's a few things I think to call out in terms of the different components of digital asset management that are super relevant in this economy. First of all, 90% of content, I would argue, doesn't need to be unique creatively. It is small changes to existing content. So, for example, I've got an advert for a car. I launched that advert in the UK. It's got some text associated with it. Yeah. Rather than having a motorway in the background, I want to use that same image in Germany, for example. I need to swap out the English language for German language. I perhaps want to change the backdrop from a motorway to a autobahn. That type of creative change can now be automated via templates. And so we enable organizations to scale content creation by putting it in the hands of anyone, anywhere. Yeah, minimal training. You can scale content creation rather than have designers with Photoshop's skills, for example, do that work, or Figma skills. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, by getting control and governance over your library of approved and brand approved creative content, you do a couple of things. First of all, you can start to look at reuse and repurposing of existing content. If you haven't got governance and control and a single version of the truth, things are scattered across hard drives and the like, you have no idea whatsoever whether or not you've got assets that you can put in market quickly, that in other scenarios you would have had to go to an agency to create something new. So digital asset management enables you to get that single view of all your content, which then can drive asset reuse and repurposing. And we hear this a hell of a lot more over the course of the last 12 months than we've had before. Asset reuse and repurposing, is something that we want to look at, because we recognize that there's probably a little bit of wastage there before that, there's more focus, there's a more myopic focus on there.
So it's kind of like thrifting, but for your content a little bit.
Yeah.
I like that. So, okay, we've spoken a lot about this so far, with how this can go with, especially in the financial crisis, in marketing and all of that. But do you think that there are periods of high inflation that businesses can go full on with risk taking in their marketing? Now, I know probably if they have a big budget, they can probably take risks or more risks. But do you think that there's anything else that you can keep in mind when it comes to like businesses taking bigger risks in this tough financial market?
Well, there's always been the saying, hasn't there, that the time to double down on marketing is in a down economy. I don't know how much truth there is in that. What I would say, Vianca, is that where you've got data that supports ROI, there is an opportunity to double down on the basis that a lot of the rest of the market will be going in the other direction. So, let's use Google AdWords as an example of this. Bidding driven by demand. If organizations reduce their spend on the keywords for which you're bidding in Google, it stands to reason the demand goes down, the cost per click, cost per acquisition goes down, and therefore there is an opportunity there to capture more impression share and opportunity. So I think there are places like that where you can point to ROI, which I think are areas for exploration. I think it's very, very unwise, to just go carte blanche or look at all channels, all types of marketing, carte blanche in this economic climate. I think we have a responsibility as marketeers to be responsible with organizations' spend. And so I think carte blanche, no. Pockets of investment where ROI is strong, yes.
So it basically is just go back to the data and see what that tells you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's certainly where we've started. We're very, very, Bynder is an incredible organization. 70% of our demand is marketing driven. So, I think we're in a little bit of a bubble, actually, even though we're incredibly responsible about our spend. Marketing dollars are certainly not one of the things that we've been looking to cut, given its contribution to pipeline and revenue. So I know that that's not the same for other categories and other industries, but I think it will vary from organization to organization.
So just one more thing before I carry on to the next section. I don't know if you know this, but DesignRush does host a marketplace or a directory of global agencies, that are really good at with outsourcing and partnering up with different companies. I'm wondering though, what do you think agencies or directories like DesignRush, what benefits are there for them to also help companies cut costs in times of financial hardship?
Well, I think it's a marketplace, isn't it, for
Yeah.
access to talent and ideas, and I think there's a lot of organisations that have often operated on, hey, if it isn't broken, I'm not gonna, nothing needs fixing. But I think directories like that represent an opportunity for organizations to again reevaluate their existing relationships and open their eyes to something else that may be out there. And certainly in this era of economic trouble, there's a lot of pressure on spend. And so I think that it just offers choice more than anything else.
All right, so continuing on, obviously AI and automation are transforming marketing, and there's just no two ways about that. So right off the bat, what would you say are the areas of marketing where AI is making like a significant impact or transforming marketing, and what would you say are the benefits of that?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, and not to be ignored, nor can you ignore AI. So yeah, first of all, I think just a great deal of hyperbole around AI. I'm old enough to remember kind of the last round, probably 6-7 years ago. That came and went. This time, it's definitely here to stay, and it does present, I think, us all with incredible opportunities to automate tedious tasks. I'll speak about content creation because I think that is an area where a lot of people are looking at this, accelerate speed to market, gain competitive advantage, and increase AI, ROI. I think loads of focus on Gen AI, and of course rightly so, because I think it is transformative. But I often think there's another realm of AI as well, kind of that machine learning and automation realm that sometimes get overlooked, which I think presents perhaps the easiest route to drive efficiency. So I think two of the biggest areas of opportunity are generally around overall efficiency and efficiency in marketing organizations. Perhaps I'll give a couple of examples of how we're using tools to support that. And then content creation as well, to which, of course, I think that there are massive opportunities and massive benefits where used responsibly. So just on efficiency, quickly, we've been trialing a few tools. Humata, so it enables you to research for interviews. So Vianca, you could have pumped into Humata that you wanted all the research and all the articles that I've been involved with. It will then consolidate those. We kind of see in 2 hours or so saved in research time just on that, as we're selecting external contributors to some of the content that we're developing. And then Otter's the only one that we found has been super useful, summarizing meeting notes and actions from meetings. First of all, it enables you to get them out much faster. We see about 20 to 30 minutes saving per meeting. So I think just some examples of general efficiency. We've applied them to marketing. I think you can apply them to almost any function across an organization. And then the second area is around content operations. Yeah, and this is where we as Bynder has developed technology. So again, just a little bit of color around that. Yeah, enabling organizations to scale content creation with AI and to create these personalized content experiences. Drastically reduce the time needed to create first drafts of content whilst keeping full control. So being able to switch on, switch off when AI is used and by whom it's being used, and where it has been used, to have a full audit trail of where it's being used, so you can come back and see what is human generated and computer generated. And of course, one of the benefits of that is the ability to deliver content faster and reuse assets more effectively. Now, the other thing that we see in Core DAM, and I can talk about this because we acquired and we announced to the market an acquisition of a AI vendor to help support increased findability of assets in our DAM, is how can I find the content that I want faster and more efficiently than I could do in the past? How can I identify images that look similar to the ones that I want to use, so that I can quickly see, okay, these are all the images that we've got in our asset bank that are kind of the same, and therefore I can choose to select to use those for example. And then I think just the third area, and we've just announced this in the last 24 hours or so, we announced Gen AI and ChatGPT integration for text-based or editorial content earlier this year. We just announced in the last 24 hours transformative AI capabilities. So translation services and tone of voice, again, in a controlled environment, so that you're able to determine when you want to use AI, when you don't, and you've got a full audit trail of when and where it's been used as well. So just a couple of examples of capabilities: scale content creation, find content faster, and then speed of execution to market.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, look, that's a ton of stuff. And obviously, I know, as you even just mentioned, and congratulations as well for that announcement, by the way. As you just mentioned, though, I mean, you guys at Bynder also use AI and automation to enhance your digital asset management. So, how would you say that technology has really impacted your operations thus far? Having that in your service and your product.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's this isn't something that is new, Vianca. We've built AI and automation capabilities into our platform over many years. Yeah, so I think just important for folks to know, this isn't all brand new technology. All the vendors out there have had stuff that they've been developing for periods of time. For me, it's about how it transforms our customers' operations and enables them to deliver those exceptional content experiences to their customers better, faster, and with greater relevancy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Look, when we talk about AI as well, especially these days, and you're just saying, like, there are other vendors and everything that have been building AIs, including you at Bynder. And I think maybe, people do forget that was a thing, because it's just become like more mainstream now, right? But AI has kind of been here for a long time now. And you're right, I do think people sometimes can forget that. But one thing that I do want to ask you about AI for sure is, what do you think about the ethical consequences, if you want to call it that, or potential challenges when it comes to AI in marketing strategies?
Yeah. So, I hear a lot of things from a lot of different sources around copyright, ownership of the content, plagiarism, and so on and so forth. So I think, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in terms of the use of AI in content creation, full stop. Now, I can just talk about our approach, and I think the approach to AI that is responsible for vendors, which I think is about putting guardrails in place in the technology to protect customer brands, to prevent misuse or abuse of the technology, and giving individual teams and organizations the choice around whether to opt in or opt out of using AI, and especially generative AI capability. So it's about providing transparency and accountability, I think, of the AI to the user, so it becomes visible, and we've got an audit trail for where that content is being generated. AI's got to be safeguarded by humans, in my opinion.
Yeah, the whole thing with that is, and I think that's what a lot of people in various industries are just fighting for, is transparency. At the end of the day,
yeah,
I think AI is still far off from being able to properly function completely on its own. I mean, it's machine learning, right? You can't have one without the other.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, yes, I think that there are. I mean, I think I read recently that George R. R. Martin and another writer was busy suing OpenAI now because of copyright infringement. And yeah, I think you're right. I think having a paper trail of how that information is being used is probably the best thing. And having transparency, I think that would definitely ease a lot of people's minds with regards to something like that.
Great to meet you, Vianca. Hope that was good for you. Covered a lot.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Warren. Really.
Brilliant.
And there you have it, folks. A captivating conversation with Warren Daniels, CMO at Bynder. We've covered a wide range of topics today, from his personal journey to insights into the current financial crisis and the impact of AI in marketing. I hope you found this episode as valuable and informative as I did. If your project could benefit from a top-tier marketing agency's expertise, look no further. Head to designrush.com/marketplace. Our carefully curated selection of agencies is equipped to help you navigate the evolving digital landscape and bring your vision to life. Again, I'm your host, Vianca Mayer. Stay curious and join us for the next episode.